Welcome, everybody. Welcome, and joining us on this special Malta evening tonight. So, welcome. Come on in. Make yourself comfortable. I hope you have a drink to hand. And as soon as we have a few more people in, we'll be introducing the evening. So, welcome. Do make yourself comfortable. And if you want to use the chat box and say hello and tell us where you are, where you're joining us from, we always love to know that. So somebody from Potter's Bar with a Greek name, so by the looks of it. So welcome, Kyriakos. So good to have you here tonight. We've got a hello from Dublin, Mary. So greetings, East Yorkshire, New York City. Good work. Well, welcome. So, right, coming in far too fast now to all read out, but we've got Loughborough, we've got West Sussex, we've got Basingstoke, sunshine and showers in Glasgow. Oh, yeah, well, we've had hail today down south. Have you had hail? Some of you, and snow, I hear, is forecast in some places. Hello to Richard from New Delhi. 11 p.m. there. Okay, well, at least it's not 2 a.m. So welcome. Welcome to Louise from Menden in Germany. Vicky from Wales. Is that Clele or something? Would you be how you pronounce that, I presume? Good evening to Kathy and Sharon in Epping Forest. And Alan Brighton, Lynn and Eton. Welcome. Sheila from Kent. We got Sutton Coldfield. We got Chicago. Rosemary, welcome. Yvonne in the Peak District. And Mary Claire is that in Edinburgh. Welcome. Kelly in the Netherlands, Patricia in the Isle of Man. See, we cover the world on these events. We really do. David from Darkest Northants. I hope it's not dark. Oh, too dark. Dick from South Africa. Welcome all the way from South Africa. We've got hellos from Cornwall. We've got somebody from Malta. Hello. Oh, gosh. Right, we better not get anything wrong tonight. Maureen in Castle Donington, welcome. We've got hello from Aberdeen, George. So, yeah, Peter, I don't know if that's somebody you know. We've got David in Edinburgh. We've got hellos from Cardiff. Somebody else in the Netherlands, Charmin. So, Louise in London. Somebody very complicated. Alice in East London, waiting for Sister Felicity in South London. Oh, gosh. So it's all going on. Hello from Reading, Sandown. We've got Warrington, Welwyn, somebody else in Cornwall, and hail literally from Dublin. Right, gosh. Okay. Yeah, carry on telling us for a minute or two where you're greeting us from. Halifax, Fareham. And as soon as we think we've got most people in, we'll go to a poll. So as ever in these events, we'd love to know how many of you know, in this case, Malta. So let's do a little poll. In fact, this one is how likely are you to visit Malta in the next 12 months? Is that right? Oh, no, have you visited Malta before? Sorry, I can't read it. Have you visited Malta before? So I'm fortunate enough to have. I've been twice myself, had a wonderful time. But let's see if you have. So looks like, yeah, around 44% have visited Malta before. About 25% say no, and a further 30% say no, but it's on their list. So people who are already thinking they definitely want to go. Well, thank you. That's always really good for the speakers to know and get a feel for who, what knowledge people have got and what they're likely to want to know. So to let you know what's happening this evening, well, I'm Lynn Hughes. I'm the founding editor of Wanderlust. And I'm being joined tonight by 3 excellent speakers. Really looking forward to this. So to run through them, first of all, we're going to be hearing from Peter Green, and Peter holds a master's in tourism and hospitality management. He began his career at Thomas Cook, where he was manager for Malta, and Peter now works at Visit Malta, where he trains the travel trade and to make them experts. So welcome, Peter. And we're also joined by Louise Zammit. Louise is Maltese, but has lived in the UK for the past decade and has worked for Visit Malta for 6 years now, helping travellers with their queries about the destination before they visit. Louise said she enjoys connecting with her culture and Maltese roots through the conversations that she has with British travellers. And then we are very honoured to be joined by Liam Gauci. Liam is the director of the Malta Maritime Museum, and in recent years he's headed the project Taste History, an initiative that has strived to unearth culinary secrets from Malta's past. Liam's a lecturer at the University of Malta, where he lectures in underwater maritime archaeology. So an awful lot there, Liam. I mean, I feel like we probably could have had an hour with you alone. So, but yeah, we can't wait for your presentation. Now, we were also going to be joined tonight by Jack Organ of Trailfinders. And Jack, well, indeed, will be joining us, but only in the chat box, because unfortunately, Jack has had technical issues today. So we will still be having a presentation from Jack, which is pre-recorded, and he will be in the chat box during the evening, because as a reminder, Trailfinders have got some great offers for Wanderlust readers this evening, but also Jack will be able to answer perhaps questions as we go along, whatever. So don't be surprised if he pops up. Then once we've heard from all our speakers tonight, we'll go, as per usual, to a Q&A. And so we'll, during the evening, do put your questions into the chat box. We may well answer some of them as we go along. But then, oh yeah, and Jack has just said hello from the chat box. Evening, Jack. And our other speakers, of course, might go into the chat box as well. And we've also got Rosie from Wanderlust in the chat box as well, who'll be able to put you in a direction in some cases if we think we've got something interesting for Wanderlust could share. So, but we'll also save up questions for the Q&A at the end, where we'll try and go through as many as possible. And as ever, what we will do is we will send out in 2 or 3 days, we'll send out a link to a recording of tonight. So if there's anything you want to hear again, or if you missed a little bit for whatever reason, you'll be able to listen to it again. And we'll also cover some of the questions and answers in there. So for instance, if there was a place that you weren't sure how it's spelt or something like that, we try and make sure that that is in the follow-up email. So do look out for that. Right, so without further ado, I think it's probably best if we go to Peter and to kick us off with a bit of an overview and insight into the Maltese Islands, and also why, even if you've been before, there's always so much more to explore within the archipelago. So, Peter.
Yep, no, absolutely, Lynn. Thank you very much for introducing me there, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. And obviously, again, a massive thank you to Wanderlust for hosting this event. Today, Louise and I will be taking you through the Maltese archipelago and her islands as we discover all parts that make this an ideal year-round holiday destination. From the history of the islands to the culture that defines Malta as one of the friendliest countries in Europe, and the unique events calendar that makes this a one-stop shop for all ages and all demographics. Now, I just want to start by obviously addressing the big issue that's on everyone's mind at the current moment. The current COVID statistics that are coming out of Malta are actually very promising. The country has one of the highest vaccination rates in the EU, with around a quarter of the population having received their first dose, and a third of that having received the second dose. And also slightly different to the UK, the frontline health staff and education providers have been the priority, with the next phase then moving into the age demographics, and they've now done the over 75s. I think literally just as of yesterday, they started with the 60s and up as well. And then they're going to follow a similar age demographic pattern as the UK. So due to obviously the low overall population and the high vaccination rates, we do look forward to a holiday season once the government lifts the travel restrictions. So just to take you in, the Republic of Malta, as it's officially known, consists of 3 islands. We've got the large main island of Malta, we've got the smaller island of Gozo, and then we've got the wee island of Camino sporting there. And together they make up the Maltese archipelago. And each island has its own identity and touristic offering for you. And there's a real sense of comfort here, as Malta was actually an ex-British colony. So wandering its streets, you'll still to this day find the red telephone boxes and the post boxes that we're accustomed to seeing. And actually one of the two official languages is English, meaning that gathering information or mixing with the locals comes with real ease. And as we'll come to learn, the history of the islands is expansive and dates back over 7,000 years. And such is the mixing pot of cultures and heritage here that Valletta was actually named the 2018 European City of Culture, which drew record numbers to what is officially the sunniest capital city of Europe, boasting over 300 days of sunshine each year. And all this is just a short 3-hour flight from the UK, or just over 3.5 hours from Ireland. So from the sights and sounds of the island of Malta to the nature and the history of Gozo and the tranquility of Camino, you can really escape the beaten path here and explore the varying sights that each island has to offer. For those that want to stretch their sea legs, you can head on to the water and enjoy the crystalline seascapes of Camino. You can sail the short distance to the island of Gozo. To discover this idyllic step back in time. You can explore the Gigantia temples, you can meander the streets of its capital, Victoria, and it's also the home of Gozo wine, considered some of the finest in the area, which Louise will cover a little bit later on for you. And if your resort doesn't have enough for you to do, which we doubt, but you never know, then you can hop on board one of the plentiful boats to take you either to some of the other coastal towns or cities, or even just enjoy a day on board and circumference the island, taking in the scenic cityscapes and the picturesque coastline. Now, whilst Malta is also not known as a traditional beach destination, especially when you compare it to the likes of maybe the Algarve or maybe the costas of Spain, this small country certainly holds its own with an abundance of man-made bays. We've got perched beaches, and we've also got the golden sands, the latter of which can be found on the north of the island and also on that of Gozo. And just a couple to point out here, we've got Melia Bay, which is the largest blue flag beach in Malta, and it's next to the tranquil town of Melia, with some lovely family-friendly hotels nearby that are basically beachfront. We've also got Ramla Bay, which we can see here, which is one of the most photographed beaches of Malta, and it's found on the north side of Gozo with a beautiful wide stretch of red sand and some lovely viewpoints from up above if you do want to have a little hike up there and take some pictures. And we've also got the Blue Lagoon, which is one of the most visited beaches and swimming points of the island. It's got these beautiful sort of crystal clear azure blue waters, and it does become incredibly busy during the summer months. So honestly, a top tip for you would be that if you are going to go out, get one of the first boats out in the day to ensure a kind of peaceful morning amongst the clear waters. And Malta also boasts a jam-packed events calendar throughout the entire year, and it really has got something to cater for everyone, from families to couples, even to let the young at heart as well. So obviously during the pandemic, many of the large-scale events were postponed due to the health and safety reasons. But however, as we move out of the pandemic, many of the events are being planned for later into 2021 and are definitely a popular attraction for locals and tourists alike. So Easter, being a highly religious country, Easter is a huge celebration, and it's a grand spectacle that actually starts the weekend before Easter and lasts over a week, and it culminates in this unmissable collection of processions, vigils, and festivities. We've also got the Summer Carnival that is held every August, and Carnival is a really joyous celebration where everyone is encouraged to join in, and that includes the tourists as well, where you get these beautifully designed floats that parade the streets. You've got local musicians that create a real electric party atmosphere, and it lasts well into the night, so don't forget your dancing shoes in there as well. And we've also got the Fireworks Festival, which is held every April. I believe it might be pushed back a little bit this year, obviously with the current situation, but it's a celebration of Malta joining the EU back in 2004, and it's a beautiful display right over Valletta's famed Grand Harbour. So just coming on to some of the activities that you can do, and we've got some of them pictured here, there is an absolute abundance that you can undertake while on holiday in Malta. So we've got the historical sites of the island, which again, Louise will cover a little bit later on, to the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, to again, the Gozo wine experiences. And even on top of that, you've also got scuba diving, which I'll cover in a second. You've got snorkeling, horseback riding, you've got boat tours, have we seen, you've got walking tours. If you want to get into the cultural side of things, there's cheese making, and there's also glass blowing workshops that you can get involved in. And also discovering the film heritage of the islands, where many blockbuster films, including the likes of Troy, Gladiator, the 1980s film Popeye with Robin Williams, as we can see in the picture here, and also the box office smash hit Game of Thrones. You can also enjoy a tour from the viewpoint of a traditional fishing boat as you sail the harbor. You can take in the scenic countryside from a Segway, or maybe you can take in the Rolling Geeks tour, which you can actually see in the bottom left picture here, which is a self-drive audio tour of the 3 cities. I still remember the first time I went in one of these, I nearly crashed one into a parked car, much to the delight of my my group leader at the time. But these are just a few of the ones that I've named. I could honestly spend probably this whole presentation going into a little bit more detail on these. But I will cover off scuba diving. Scuba diving in Malta is probably one of the greatest activities that you can do while on holiday here. And that's not just a professional opinion, but that's a personal one from my own, because I actually learned to dive in Malta on one of my first holidays. And having dived elsewhere in the world, I would still say it's one of the best places I've dived. And to back this up, Malta is consistently voted the #1 dive site in Europe. And it's also the #2 dive site in the whole entire world. You've got over 100 dive sites located around the islands, from the easy shallow reef diving to the more advanced cave and wreck diving. And the latter includes World War II plane wrecks. We've got sunken ships as well, which make for a serene and beautiful backdrop for those that do want to adventure beneath the waves. And one of the key selling points, especially for those of you that have kids, is that diving in Malta, the general age for children to start their PADI, which is one of the recognized certifications for scuba diving, the usual starting age is 12, but actually in Malta, kids as young as 10 can take part. So crystal clear visibility also allows divers the opportunity to see a range of underwater species up close and from a distance. So you've got octopi, scorpion fish, you've got bright orange parrotfish, and even some of the luckier ones might be able to see the elusive triggerfish. And a little bit more on some of the activities. So we've got hiking and biking. This has become increasingly popular to undertake on the islands, because the warm days, especially during your shoulder seasons, so your springs and your autumns, and even the milder winter days, are ideal to get out and explore the landscape, either by foot or by 2 wheels. You've got numerous rental shops in many of the major resorts. And if you want to get involved, they often do escorted tours with a certified guide that can show you around some of the more scenic routes. And even cycling on the road here is actually an easy comparison to the UK, because the Maltese drive on the left-hand side of the road, so there's no need to get adjusted to the usual European right-hand side. And in terms of hiking as well, we've got cliff-top strolls that give way to tranquil beaches or bay walks. You've got lush countryside that's dotted with peaceful towns and villages, and you've even got those famous Neolithic ruins, which means each new route walked will have something different for you to discover. And some of the top walks that you can undertake while in Malta include, again, the islands of Gozo and Camino. You've got Fawara Walk, which takes in Dingley Cliffs. You've got the Watchtower Trails up in the north of the island, and you've also got the Windmill Walks of Zodiac. So really beautiful for you to take in. I'm now going to hand you over to Louise, who's going to go into a little bit more detail about the history of the culture, the heritage, and a little bit of the gastronomy as well. So over to you, Louise.
Thank you, Peter. So as Peter was saying, the Maltese Islands have a very colorful history and are home to 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And spanning across several millennia, the islands have been ruled in succession by the Phoenicians, the Romans, the Arabs, the Normans. However, it was the Knights of St. John who left the biggest imprints on the islands during their 268-year rule. And this was back in the 16th century. Malta then gained independence in 1964 after the British rule, which lasted over 150 years. And we'd like to take a closer look at these heritage sites. This is one of the megalithic temples, of which there are 7 dotted around the islands. The prehistoric temples found on Malta and Gozo are amongst the oldest and the best preserved temples in the world. And the ones that we can see here are the Gigantia temples found on the island of Gozo. These temples date back to around 3,600 years BC, and they predate the Egyptian pyramids and Stonehenge by around 1,000 years. And the Gozitans used to believe that these temples were built by giants due to the impressively large boulders which were used to build these temples. And the name Gigantia is actually derived from the word giant in Maltese. The second UNESCO World Heritage Site is the Halsaflini Hypogeum. Hypogeum means underground in Greek. And this is a subterranean structure which is dating back to the prehistoric period of 4,000 years BC. This site is situated in Paula, which is a short distance away from Valletta, our capital city. The Hypogeum was discovered quite by accident in 1902. And it's actually, when they started to excavate, there were various bones, statuettes, potteries, and artifacts which were unearthed. And it is believed that close to 7,000 bodies were buried inside the Hypogeum. Now, in order to preserve this temple, the Hypogeum is open to a very limited number of visitors per day. So we always recommend that if you do wish to visit, to book even up to 2 to 3 months in advance. And the third UNESCO World Heritage Site is the city of Valletta in its entirety. It was built on a barren strip of land by the Knights of St. John back in the 16th century. It is steeped in history and is the perfect fusion of historical buildings and modern architecture, which is what makes Valletta so unique. There are around 320 monuments, cathedrals, and churches dotted around Valletta, and this has earned it the name of an open-air museum. In 2018, Valletta was crowned European City of Culture, as Peter mentioned, and it was given a new lease of life. The old deserted palaces, which were the homes of the knights who built this fortified city, were transformed into boutique hotels, giving the visitors quite an exclusive experience when staying in one of these historical palazzos. And I have a short video here that I'd like to share with you, as I think it really captures some of the beauty of our city. Now, I might be slightly biased, however, I do think that Valletta is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. If you really wish to immerse yourself in the Maltese culture, the village Festa is the pinnacle of our tradition and heritage. These festas are the highlights on the Maltese event calendar, and they take place mainly during the spring and summer months. The Festa commemorates each town and village's patron saint and are held across 3 to 5 days. Now, if you're experiencing the Maltese Festa for the very first time, be prepared, as it's going to be noisy and very lively. You'll have band marches playing the feast anthems, the villagers dressed in their best clothes and catching up on the latest gossip. The church exteriors are lit by thousands of lights, and the interiors are decorated with beautiful damask. There are fireworks displays and street food. However, I think that one of the main highlights of the Festa is the procession, where a group of around 8 local men carry a life-size statue of the patron saint on their shoulders and are followed by a crowd of pious villagers. The village Festa is the perfect chance to mingle with the locals and experience something truly unique. At the moment, the Festas, like many other festivals, are on pause. However, we look forward to them resuming once the current restrictions are safely lifted. Now, typically, there is a traditional food associated with each religious festival, which we can see here. So, for example, at the village Festa, you can try some imaret, which is a sweet pastry with a date filling, and then it's deep fried for extra crunch and dusted with icing sugar. Another traditional sweet is the prignolata, which we can see here. This dome-like cake starts popping up in confectioneries a few weeks prior to carnival time. The Maltese cuisine tells the story of our history and is essentially a fusion of Mediterranean, North African, Italian, French, and British influences. And gastronomy is at the heart of the Maltese culture, revolving around sharing and celebrations. Some of our traditional dishes are rabbit stew, braciole, which are beef olives, caponata, the Maltese version of ratatouille, and bigilla, which is a thick pate made with broad beans and garlic. And here we can also see the pastizzi, which are a staple in our culture. They're made from flaky and crispy savory pastry, which is indigenous to Malta, and they have a filling of either ricotta or mushy peas. And every village has a pasticceria shop, which is usually a hole in the wall with a counter at the entrance. Pastizzi are so ingrained in our culture that they've also found their way into the Maltese language. So we say jimbijaw pal pastizzi, which is equivalent to saying selling like hotcakes. So from street food, we move on to fine dining. In February of last year, 3 local restaurants were awarded the most prestigious restaurant rating, the Michelin Star, which really reflects the diversity of the island's cuisine and also the talent of its chefs. Now, no Mediterranean meal is complete without a delicious glass of local wine. The grapes that are grown in Malta's hot and humid climate ripen much quicker and produce some excellent wines. Aside from the international grape varieties, we also have the indigenous varieties, the Gellosa and Gargantina. Excuse me. However, you will need to visit the islands for a taste of these lovely wines, as there is never enough in production left to export, and we do tend to keep all the good stuff to ourselves. The main wineries organize guided tours and tastings, and there are also a number of wine festivals as part of our annual events calendar. Beer is also produced in Malta, with the most popular one being the Cisklager, and the beer festival is also a very popular event. We have a local soft drink, which is kinny, and this is made from local bitter oranges mixed with herbs and spices. And kinny is a little bit like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. I personally love kinny, served with a slice of orange and ice, and this makes a really refreshing drink to enjoy during a hot summer's day. So to conclude this presentation, I'd like to share a gastronomy trail with you, which was created by our marketing team. There are a number of these themed video trails which can be found on YouTube, and these really help to showcase all that the Maltese Islands have to offer, from adventure, history, pilgrimage, and gastronomy. So enjoy the video.
Lynn, I don't know if we've got any audio for you. Seems like there's
Okay. Lynn, we lost you.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go.
There you are.
I don't know what happened there. Really sorry. Oh gosh, that's a bit embarrassing when I'm the one who gets the techie problem. Yeah, sorry. Oh gosh, and there it was. Of course, I said such words of wisdom as well, and you've missed it. I was saying actually in the comments box, which of course I was watching, and the wonderful comments, and you know, somebody said, for instance, "What an amazing place!" ! And why hadn't they been yet? And I think this is it. People are so surprised. I noticed somebody, for instance, called Margaret, said she's not into beaches. She'd always thought that Malta was full of tourists and full of, and she's not into beaches. And of course, there's so much more than that, isn't there? Absolutely tremendous. And Louise, I totally agree with you that Valletta is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I mean, gosh, it is outstanding, isn't it? Now, I know we're going to do questions in a while, after Liam and Jack, but I think it's important to say, really, that people can stay, for instance, in Valletta, in the three cities, can't they?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, so you don't have to stay. If you're not a beach resort sort of person, you can stay in Valletta, you can stay in Medina, you can stay in all these interesting places. You don't have to stay in a resort.
across the three cities, Medina, Valletta. There's some really beautiful kind of like old townhouses that have been converted into hotels. You've got these boutique style properties as well, which I believe we'll come on to a little bit later on in the Trailfinders presentation as well, that are steeped in history. So you get that real kind of step back in time vibe when you check in, and you marvel at the grandeur of the buildings, and then when you step outside, you're right in the hub of everything. Everything's right on your doorstep, and you can have a little look around. So really is some fantastic properties.
Yeah, so it really is somewhere that you could go, for instance, just for a short city break, for instance. Why not? And then Louise, thank you so much for that insight into the food and drink, which I'm sure was an eye-opener for so many people as well. That fusion of delicious food, and you're absolutely right. The best wine is kept there, and I still have happy memories of going for a wine tasting straight after breakfast somewhere, and that was dangerous. But the wines are absolutely excellent. So. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A when we'll go through a lot of the questions. But next, we're going to hear from Liam from the Malta Maritime Museum, and a bit still on the food and drink theme, really, because Liam's going to give us an insight into one of Malta's culinary secrets.
So, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So, today I'm going to be talking to you about, the title goes, Creating a Maltese Gin, the search for a Maltese recipe. But while I'm going to be talking to you about all this, I would like to share with you what we are doing in Malta across every museum on the island. Although I am director of the Malta Maritime Museum, I form part of a much bigger network that is Heritage Malta. And in most of these museums, we are trying to go beyond what you will find in a traditional museum. And we have started this project, which is Taste History. So we are inviting locals and visitors and tourists alike to come into the museum and have a different experience, where all the visitors become archaeologists. They become archaeologists through the sense of taste, and where you actually smell and taste 18th century, 16th century, prehistoric foods. As Louise was mentioning, we have UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which we call them the temples, which are 6,000, 5,000 years old, and we're actually recreating food that was being eaten at these temples. And it's this kind of experience that we would like to share with our visitors, where we actually change a bit the dynamics of what happens in a museum, and you actually eat next to, for example, a 5,000-year-old earthenware in the presence, because archaeologists are angry at me when I say you'll eat next to a 5,000-year-old earthenware bowl. but you'll be in the presence of a 5,000-year-old bowl, which back in 6,000 years ago, people were eating roasted beef or roasted pork in 6,000 years ago. We try to do these experiences, and the presentation today is actually this introduction to one of these searches that we're trying to do at the moment. I want to take you to Valletta. We've just seen a photo of Valletta today. This is Valletta in the very early 18th century. What was Valletta? Valletta was a fortress in the middle of the Mediterranean, bang in the middle on a rock without any resources. And there were these bunch of knights which had sworn to defend Christianity. But apart from that, they had a good excuse to be in the middle of the Mediterranean, and they were passing out licenses to everyone and anybody who would come to Malta, swear that he would give 10% of the profits to them, 5% to the cloister nuns who were in Valletta, that they were because they were praying for these merchants with a license to steal everything and anything that belonged to the Ottoman Empire. These guys were sailing out of harbor, as you can see, all those ships there in harbor, sail out of Malta, which is bang in the middle, just under Sicily, in the middle, above Africa. They would sail to the east or to the west, but usually to the east. And there they were literally leeching on the richest sea lanes of the Mediterranean. So they were bypassing the Venetians, who were actually selling all the great spices to Europe. They would bypass the Venetians, and at gunpoint, they were stealing spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, coffee coming from Ethiopia, vanilla coming from Madagascar, bringing it to Malta and selling it off to Europe. And Malta was becoming a bit of a tavern of the Mediterranean and also the shop of the Mediterranean, especially when it came to spices and to foods. This is where we come in. This is where it gets exciting for us historians and curators at Heritage Malta and at the Maritime Museum, because we get inspired from these days, and we go into the archives and we start looking at recipes, we start looking at archaeological excavations, both on land and underwater. Heritage Malta takes care of over 35 shipwrecks and airplane wrecks around the island, which you can also dive and visit once you are on the island. But these wrecks we are actually excavating. Just to give you an idea, we are excavating a Schlendi wreck in Gozo, the sister island, which is changing the history of the Phoenicians in the Mediterranean. But that's another story for another day. Today we are going to be going to the common sailors. The common sailors and their drink, because we are on the search of a Maltese gin, because in the documents we are coming up with references to this gin drink, which we would like to recreate, we would like to distill at the Maritime Museum, where people can actually taste what sailors on such a boat, which we can see over here, were drinking. We were drinking a lot of wine, wine coming from all over the world. Apart from the wine which was being produced in Malta, they were getting wine from Alsace, from France, from Champagne, from Portugal, from Sicily, just above us, all the way from Hungary, and also from South Africa. And I'm mentioning this because this is our connection for the gin. Dutch South Africa was also distilling junipers back in the 17th century. And the Maltese were trying to copy this. We know that they were doing this because they needed a hard liqueur to keep you warm in the cold summer, in the cold winter months out at sea, and also to enjoy a night out on the town during the 18th century. And we knew that this was there, but we had to find a recipe. We had to find evidence of how this gin, and I'm using gin in the most broadest of senses, what was it? How was it being made? So Just to give you an idea of gin, this is obviously one of the most famous posters by Hogarth of the effects of gin on London in the 18th century. And this kind of effects, obviously, this is a poster of why you shouldn't be drinking gin, and this is why Hogarth was painting it. But gin was having a very bad effect. However, it was the drink of the poor, both all over Europe, both in London and also then in Malta. We knew how it was being done in Europe. We knew that such stills were being found in Malta. So what we want to do is recreate this at the Maritime Museum, because currently, thanks to COVID, and you won't hear anyone else in the world saying this, thanks to COVID, we have been given an opportunity to close our museum and restore it, enlarge it, and we're going to enlarge it by over 1,000 square meters. And part of the experience of the Maritime Museum, which is in Virgo, on the waterfront, we're actually going to have a curated winery and a curated distillery where you can actually taste liqueurs from the 18th century. We hope that one of them will be this gin that I'm going to be talking to you about. So what we did was some of the nicest moments for me as a curator is being able to walk into an 18th century Maltese public library and dive into centuries old manuscripts and go through these documents and try to find these recipes. On good days you find something, on bad days you don't find anything. But recently we have come across this gin recipe. This is Louise had just shown us a picture of this piazza where you can actually enjoy a good coffee or drink some wine in one of the local bars that there are around this piazza. In the center of the slide, you can see the library, which was built in the 1790s. In this library, I managed to find this document. It's in Italian, because the official language of Malta at the time was Italian. We had a Maltese language. The Maltese language goes back to the 16th century, and we actually had Maltese dictionaries being published in the 18th century. But this recipe is written in Italian so as to explain to the distillers, which were coming from all over, especially from Sicily and from Holland, from Holland and Belgium, how to distill junipers to turn into gin. Why do we call it gin? Because it is derived from junipers. This recipe just is mind-boggling because it drives us mad. Why does it drive us mad at the Maritime Museum? Because you go through a sentence and he will say that add enough barley, malt barley, and enough sugar according to your liking. Would you like, if you like it sweeter, if you like it less sweet? It doesn't go to that according to your liking. So what happens? Just to give you an idea, for example, he explains that you need to crush the junipers for as long as it takes to recite the Holy Creed. And this is quite a complication, because the Holy Creed back then was not said in English or in Maltese, in Latin. So we have to time ourselves reciting the Holy Creed so that we know how long we're going to crush the junipers before we then mix them into the malt mixture and then to distill them. It starts to get very complicated. We are a team of chefs, curators, archaeologists, and master distillers. We sit down and we start putting 1 and 2 together. Hopefully, we will be able to have a distillery here at the Maritime Museum. And this is the Maritime Museum at the Virgo waterfront, built in 1842 by the Royal Navy as a bakery. Within the building itself, we have just discovered underground caves, which will form part of our distillery. And visitors to the museum by the end of the year will be able to walk in through this distillery and actually be able to taste these recipes that we are recreating. Hopefully, if all goes well, you will be able to taste gin. These are gin bottles which we uncover from underwater. It starts off to the left with your wine bottle. That's an onion bottle, so it would be able to be taken on board ship, so it will not topple over. So it's bottom heavy. Then you've got the typical Chablis or Pinot Noir bottle, which we brought up from underwater, and then you get your gin bottles. And so once we will be selling our gin bottles, we are also going to be recreating the original gin bottles which we uncover from underwater. I went through all my presentation quickly, so not to bore you with all the details. But why did I choose this subject? Why did I choose to tell you about this experiment and this recipe that we are on the search for? Because I wanted to share with you what we want to do with regards to all our museums on the island, because Malta has a lot more to offer than sun, than the beaches. Those are nice, really nice. But we also have this new, let's say, in vogue moment, which is we need to discover, we need to tell a new story of our island. That new story is found in our taste, in our history, and also in our identity as a people living on a rock in the middle of the Mediterranean, being shopkeepers of Europe for a very, very long time. So we would like to invite you to come over to our shop and taste history. Thank you for your attention.
Oh, Liam, that was terrific. Thank you so much. And you have just yourself told, a totally new story about Malta for so many of us. And that was fascinating. And obviously, I know there'll be a lot more questions for you later. But somebody was asking, when do you think the museum will reopen? Have you any idea at all?
Thanks to COVID, we are ahead of time. So the plan is that we will have a very soft launch by the end of the year. And then by 2023, everything will be up and running. 2022.
So, yeah.
However, taste history is not limited to the Maritime Museum. So we have Fort St. Angelo, which is one of the oldest forts on the island. It goes back to Roman times. And until 1979, it was called HMS St. Angelo, an unsinkable ship because it's a castle. And there you can actually have 270 degrees views of the Grand Harbor while actually enjoying the food that was eaten there by Nelson himself and by the Knights of St. John. So we have various places that you can enjoy this experience. And I would like to invite the audience to look us up on Facebook at Taste History MT. And there are a couple of documentaries which you can learn more about this project and where you can actually taste all this food.
Oh, I mean, what you've just said is just so mind-boggling. That's wonderful. And my next question was going to be, how do we find out more?
Yes.
So what we'll make sure we do as well is when we send out the follow-up email in a couple of days, we'll put in there about the Facebook and anything else. If you think there's any particularly useful videos or, YouTube videos or anything else, we'll be able to include that in the follow-up email for people.
I'll give you all the links.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm sure we'll have lots of questions for you in a few minutes. But before then, obviously, I think everybody now will be dying to come to Malta and dying to find out more, and including lots more about the history. So Trailfinders are offering a special offer tonight. So as explained earlier, Jack can't be here in person. He is in the chat box. I see people have been interacting with him. But because of the technical problems, he can't be on screen. But we are going to show something he recorded earlier. So over to you, Jack.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Organ, and I'm the Destination Manager for the European Beach Resorts here at Trailfinders. Many of you may know Trailfinders as a tour operator that traditionally sends clients further afield, so you may think of destinations such as Australia, New Zealand, or the USA. However, in 2018, we embarked on a new project to offer a full European program for our clients. And recently, we've established that to offer destinations across Europe, including Malta, and now send as many clients in the last few weeks to Greece as we would to the USA. So that's kind of an idea of how our European program has developed and grown over the last few years. And this evening, I'm just going to give you a little bit more detail on how we sell Malta and Gozo. So the destination is definitely a more recent addition to our program. And here at Trailfinders, we're able to tailor the holiday exactly to your needs. So if you like relaxing on the beach, we can easily arrange that for you. If you're into history and culture, we can tick that box. And if you like a foodie holiday, then again, we can arrange that for you in a tailor-made package tailored to exactly what you want. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of two of the popular holidays we offer in Malta. The first holiday is called the Gastronomic Delights of Malta. So as you may have heard this evening, gastronomy is a huge part of Maltese culture. And with this holiday, you're going to be based in Valletta, the capital, for 1 week. From there, you'll be able to have the chance to explore the lovely bars and restaurants which make Valletta very famous. You can discover some hidden trails, some small quirky restaurants, but also have the opportunity to go further afield in the island. And on Sunday morning, we definitely recommend heading to the fish market of Maris Lux, which is about a 20-minute bus ride away from Valletta, the capital, and is a traditional fishing village, which is very popular and very interesting, and will give you a unique insight into the culture there. No trip to Malta would be complete without tasting some of the famous wines, so we definitely recommend heading to the vineyards. And in addition to this, to really top off your stay, there are now 3 Michelin-star restaurants in Malta. So we've got Nonni, Dimodin and Undergrain. So we'd certainly recommend finishing off your trip with a visit to one of those lovely Michelin-star restaurants. Our second holiday is Historic Malta and Stunning Gozo. So this holiday, again, we'd suggest a week, but you can tailor this to exactly how long you want to spend in the destination. So we'd recommend 4 nights at the start in Malta, and then 3 nights at neighbouring sister island Gozo. So in Malta, again, you can do all of the foodie activities I've just explained. If you prefer to do some history or some culture, we'd recommend a visit to St John's Cathedral, which is a standout historic site. And also a day trip to the walled city of Medina is certainly a great opportunity to see some unique architecture. And then on day 5, you guys would head north. We'd arrange the ferry for you and the transfer to take you over to neighbouring Gozo. And whilst you're on Gozo, there's a variety of things we'd recommend doing. So very popular for walking and outdoor lovers, but also for history lovers. You may have heard a little bit about the ancient archaeological sites. So the Giganta temples are actually older than the pyramids of Egypt. So we'd certainly recommend a visit there. If all this sounds like a little bit too much activity, then you can chill out at the beach, with Ramla Bay being very popular for its iconic red sand. Once you've kind of finished your trip, we'll arrange all the transfers back to the airports and also your flights home. So really, the whole package can be organised by Trailfinders for these 2 holidays. If that's not good enough, we've managed to secure some exclusive offers for you guys as well. So I won't go into too much detail on the offers. They're all on the PowerPoint you can see here, but they're valid throughout the summer 2021 if booking with Trailfinders. So if you're wanting a stay in Valletta, look no further than the iconic The Fonacia Hotel, where we've got a 30% discount if you book by the end of the month. The Corintha Hotel, which is located in St George's Bay, we've got 15% discount. And if you're looking for a little bit more relaxation, head out to the Corinthian Palace Hotel and Spa, where we've got a 15% discount there again if you book by the 11th of April. And that property is located about a 15-minute drive from Valletta near Sant'Anton Gardens. So with all that in mind, there are a few more benefits we'd like to kind of make you aware of with booking with Trailfinders. So I'm sure you've seen in the media and in the press how we've done an exceptional job of not only putting our clients first, but making sure money is financially secure. So we have a unique trust account system here, which means your funds are entirely protected. In addition to this, we have a credit safe score of 100 out of 100 and a Trustpilot rating of 5-star from nearly 20,000 reviews. Furthermore, we have the Trailfinders Peace of Mind insurance policy. So if you book a package within 7 days of departure, there is a change to the FCO advice against travel, or if they're making you quarantine in the local destination or the UK, you'll be given 3 options with Trailfinders. The first option would be to travel as booked if you're happy to. The second would be to change to the new dates anytime you want. Or the third option would be a full refund, and we'd guarantee you'd have your money back within 14 days. So we think there's some great reasons to book with Trailfinders. And finally, we think that our kind of unique service is second to none. So instead of booking online, getting confused about what you might book and what the cancellation conditions are, simply pick up the phone or head into a store when you can and speak to one of our trusted travel consultants who will help you. Thank you very much for your time this evening, and hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jack. And yeah, that was really good. It's a shame that you couldn't be here on screen yourself, but that was excellent. And you said about Trailfinders. Can I say that I have used Trailfinders for years? In pre-starting Wanderlust, I always used to use Trailfinders, and they really are one of the good guys. So very, very happy to have them involved in this evening. And yeah, they really have shown during this pandemic just how good they are, and they do put customer service first, which is excellent. Right, so can I welcome back Liam, Peter and Louise? Right, good, welcome back. And I think that well, again, yeah, what a great evening. I think you've probably all seen the comments in the chat box, and lots of questions as well. Now, several people have said about they're looking forward to getting the follow-up email, obviously, because we will be able to put a lot more. There's been so much information tonight, so we need to make sure we get as much of that as possible, I think, really, into that email. And of course, people will be able to replay the bits of the evening as well that they want. And also, we'll get all those useful links off Liam. In fact, Liam, if I come to you first, because I think people have been fascinated by the history. So have you got any recommendations for how they find out more about, are there any books you would recommend or anything they should do when they come to Malta, learn more about the history?
Well, again, I will refer to our Taste History page, where there are actually documentaries of videos and stories about the history of Malta, and you're actually going around the island in these videos. Then when it comes to books, there are a lot of books about the island and the history of the island, especially in the English language, because most of the publishing houses on the island actually publish in English. So just to give you an idea, anybody who's into the Second World War, for example, there is a lovely book by James Holland, who is a world famous British historian, who actually talks about the great moments of the Second World War in Malta, because all of you have seen the Maltese flag. There's that little tiny cross at the top corner, and that is a medal or a scar. I would love to refer to it as that, as a scar of the Second World War, where Malta became the most bombed place on earth. It was quite the story, and so it's a lovely part of our history. When it comes to food, the Second World War isn't that exciting, because Winston Churchill said there was more water in his whiskey than in his bath at Malta. So we won't be talking about the food of the Second World War.
No.
Apart from that, with regards to prehistoric history, just look it up, and most of the book websites online will give you great history books about our Maltese history.
Brilliant, because there is just so much. I think we can't stress that enough.
Exactly.
Yeah. On to more practical matters. So, Peter, for instance, what about getting around? We've had questions from people about whether they should hire a car or use public transport. Any advice there?
I mean, honestly, it depends on the type of traveler and the type of tourist that you are. I know from my own experiences, depending on where I am, I usually hire a car. But for the compact nature of Malta, you can easily get around by public transport as well. Hiring a car will allow you to access some of maybe the more remote points of the island. So certainly maybe some parts of the west coast, or certainly the south, where maybe some of the public transport doesn't exactly go. But if you do want to get around some of the main cultural sites and historical sites, including the likes of Medina, Mosta, Valletta, some of the resorts around the coastline as well, you can use the public transport, and it is very easy to get around. You can, depending on how long you're there for, I believe a week-long unlimited pass is around 21 euros per adult, I believe, and I think it's about 15 euros for a kid. So there is that options there, and that is unlimited access on the public transport system. And the buses are fantastic out there. They really are. And in terms of the ferry to get over to Gozo, because I know that that's something that's been asked as well, the ferry takes about 25 minutes. It runs every 45 minutes during sort of the peak months as well, and even runs throughout the night. And I think the cost is about €4.65 for an adult, and you pay on the return. So it's kind of is both ways as well. And I think for children between sort of 3 and 12, it's only about €1.15. So it is a really inexpensive way to see a bit more of the island.
Okay, that's brilliant. Really comprehensive info there. And basically, it all sounds very easy. I just want to pick up on a couple of things in the chat box. First of all, welcome to Juliet Ricks, who has written for Wanderlust before and is author of the Brat Guide to Malta and Gozo. And great guidebook. I've used that myself in Malta. Really, really good. So welcome, Juliet. And yes, I would personally recommend that book as well. Really, really useful. And I think a lot of our readers know the Brat Guides and how good they are. So welcome, Juliet. And a couple of people have been making recommendations. I've just lost it. There was a recommendation to the film about the Second World War that Liam had mentioned. Okay, we'll find that again in a minute. Sorry, we're getting so much coming in there.
It says here the classic film, The Malta Story, is a good impression.
That's it's a lovely classic. Let's say that. When it comes to movies, there are a couple of good ones. Gladiator was filmed in Malta, the one with Russell Crowe. There's Troy, again with Brad Pitt. But anyone who would like to see some lovely scenes of the island, I would go for Count of Monte Cristo, which it's not a very popular movie, but it's lovely with regards to the scenery of the island, and it gives you a nice feel of 18th century Malta. Let's say that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for those recommendations. Louise, we've had a lot of comments about food and people really interested. Now, what about special diets? If anybody's vegetarian or celiac, can you cope with the different diets? Oh, you're on mute, I think.
There we go. There are plenty of restaurants offering vegetarian and vegan food specifically, but as well with celiac, for example, you can just pre-notify the restaurant or the hotel and they'll be able to cater for that as well. But more recently, there are some, absolutely completely vegan restaurants that are catering specifically for vegans. So some really interesting ones in Slima mainly.
Okay. Good. I mean, I certainly remember, because I'm vegetarian myself, and I certainly remember eating really well, too well. It was very, very good. What about wine tours? One or two people have asked about wine tours as well. I mean, they're presumably quite easy to arrange.
Yes, absolutely. So you can either arrange them through the websites, and the wine tours take place both in Malta and Gozo as well. It's good to mention. And a lot of the wine tours would include a lovely Maltese platter as well. So you get the opportunity to try a beautiful Maltese platter. And that said, as well, a lot of them are actually, for example, with the Bigilla, this is good for vegetarians and vegans, because our traditional diet is mainly meat focused. However, there are certain things which are traditional food stuffs as well, which are completely vegetarian. So you'll be able to enjoy, for example, a Maltese platter, even for vegetarians. But yes, to book a wine tour, you would just need to go onto the website and book through their website.
Right, brilliant. And somebody asked about somebody got mobility issues, I think, and asked what it's like for people with mobility issues. I don't know if anybody can answer that.
Go ahead, Louise.
I was just going to say that it really depends whether it's, for example, some of the temples, because I know that some of the temples do cater. For example, I know specifically the Gigantia temples. If you're using a wheelchair, it's completely accessible. But there are certain ones, like the Halsafline Hypogeum, correct me if I'm wrong, Liam. I'm not too sure if this will be able to...
We have 32 museums and sites on the island. 30 of them are fully accessible. That is practically it. The Hypogeum is not 100% accessible. There are parts that you can visit, but still it's not 100% accessible. All the museums are accessible. It's always with the sites that is the problem. That is it. But you can visit all the temples which are fully accessible. Then there is a site at the Citadel which is also inaccessible. But the rest you're all good.
But the rest is
Yeah. If I could just add into that as well, I just want to cover mobility issues maybe around some of the resorts as well. So I know that obviously for getting around, a lot of people want to get that. So some of the resorts such as Bujubas, Liema and St. Julian's have these beautiful flat promenades all the way along the front. And on those promenades are some hotels, bars, restaurants, etc. as well. So that if you have got maybe mobility issues or just reduced mobility, then you've still got plenty of options to walk along, get along these promenades and, use the hotels and utilize the bars and restaurants there. There are some parts of maybe some of the resorts such as Valletta, etc. that can be quite steep, but you can easily skirt around those as well and still see a lot of the sites that are on the island. And this is from my own trips and also customer feedback from when I used to be a travel agent as well, that the accessibility wasn't an issue across the island.
Yeah. And just to add to that as well, the public transport is great as well for people with mobility issues. So you've got the local public transport will be absolutely perfectly accessible.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. What about when to go? Because somebody, for instance, right early on said they'd been worried there'd be too many tourists. I mean, can you escape the crowds and not? I mean, I think we'd all be quite happy to be with other people at the moment, really, social distance way. I don't think overcrowding is a problem anywhere at the moment, but is there times that you would particularly recommend to go, for instance, for somebody who doesn't want to be surrounded by too many tourists?
I personally would always recommend either the spring. Also, for example, October, November, because of our very mild Mediterranean climate, you can get some fantastic weather even in October up to November, even mid-December. And you can actually still swim normally during the months of October and into November. You can still swim. Yeah, because the sea is still warm, obviously, from the summer sun. So if you want to avoid the crowds, I always say October, November. And when we get back to the events, there are some great events that take place in October as well. So spring or October, November.
Yeah, October, November sounds brilliant. And of course, Liam would be able to visit all the museums, presumably, over the autumn and winter.
Yes, of course. The museums are open all throughout the year. What is nice is look up our calendar of events, because there are events for summer, there are events for winter, just to give you an idea. For December, if you're in Malta in December, we usually have an event where we actually go through 11 different wines which were drunk at Christmas by the Grandmaster himself. So it's a lovely event. It will keep you warm in winter.
Yeah, oh, that sounds, I think, the sort of event a lot of us Wanderlusters like, so that sounds perfect. Right, we are running out of time. So just to reiterate to people that we will be sending out the follow-up email. You will be able to watch it again. We will cover some questions in there, put some really useful links in from our speakers. And we're going to do a very quick poll before we leave. Just to, as we started with a poll, we're going to do a quick poll. So, yeah, how likely are you now to visit Malta in the next 12 months? Well, I think looking at the comments, the people, so many people were saying they want to go now or next week. Right, so very likely is up around 60% and possibly is around 37%. And when we said about the next 12 months, I'm sure everybody's looking at going in the next few years. So, yeah, a lot of interest there, which is really good. Okay, well, I think we really should... yeah, lots of people saying perfect post-lockdown destination. I think it is indeed. That's really whetted our appetites. So thank you so much. Thank you to Jack, who's been in the chat box for Trailfinders. Thanks to Louise and Peter from Visit Malta. Been lovely to have you here. And thank you so much to Liam from from Heritage Malta and the Maritime Museum. It's been brilliant. It's been so interesting. We've had great feedback and look forward to all of us visiting Malta before too long. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.